the agreement was opened for signature in 2018. Within a year, we had the 22 ratifications minimum threshold, and now we're at 47. That is very, very good. And the next stage now is really to ensure that the private sector is mobilized to a level where they start producing to supply the market on a continuous basis.
Despite the entry of the AfCFTA Pact, member states are still grappling with several barriers, including issues like complex custom procedures. How are you addressing these challenges?
At the African Union, we have a number of supporting measures. One of which is to try to remove technical barriers to trade. And the measure we are taking is to come up with the Made in Africa guide, so that any producer who wants to put that label, Made in Africa, meets certain criteria. Issues of originality, issues of intellectual property rights, which is also an element of originality, and the issues of the overall quality that is to meet that standard. So when we have that, we are going to have a situation where the products are safe to the consumer and they are competitive to the producer, and they can sell on a continuous basis. Then the next other activity is actual production, manufacturing. One of the biggest problems to manufacturing in Africa is that the inputs are imported from outside. We need now to start producing them within Africa. We are working on that one through the development of regional and continental value chains. Then another key element is at each stage, you need to measure the progress that you are making. And we at the African Union developed what we call the Africa Trade Observatory. It captures both intra-African trade flows and Africa's trade with the rest of the world.
Some countries have expressed fears of significant tariff revenue losses with the entry of the AfCFTA Pact and have been hesitant to open their borders.
We handed quite a number of financial instruments to our colleagues in Accra, Ghana, one of which was work in the development of an adjustment mechanism, AfCFTA adjustment mechanism. That has been established now. There's an initial contribution of $1 billion from the African Export-Import Bank. What is required is 10 billion, but it's going to be mobilized over time. So countries that face revenue losses, they will use the adjustment fund to see if they can get short-term financing to compensate for the loss of revenues. Then we also handed it to them, the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, to facilitate intra-African trade in local currency with net settlements in foreign exchange. That way, we're going to really assure traders to be paid on time and in full, because the payments are in local currency.
The global economy is currently facing unprecedented challenges, including trade wars, disruptions in transport and logistics systems, shocks from COVID-19, for example. Now, what is the role of the AfCFTA in helping African states navigate through this crisis?
Well, the African Continental Free Trade Area offers an aggregate market for Africa, 1.4 billion people, and it's growing. And when you look at what drives economic growth across Africa, it's domestic consumption. About close to 69% of Africa's economic growth comes from domestic consumption. So if we integrate that market, make it more viable, Africa is going to be a major consumption hub around the world. And with these geoeconomics that are emerging, geopolitics that are emerging, then you have a buffer zone and you'll be more resilient.